Hey, Dr. Andrew Merrill here at Nightlight Chiropractic, and this is Wednesday Night Wellness Live. It's a video that we do every single week on Wednesday nights at 8:30, and the goal is to give you information that's going to help you with your health now and in the future. And every week we have cycling topics that really pertain to what our patients are talking to us about, right? So the more times that we hear things, the more that we're going to think about adding them to these live videos that we do. And so recently what we've been hearing a lot from our patients is on the topic of sleep, right? Quality of sleep, timing of sleep. Why can't I sleep like I used to? My sleep's no good. Is that bad? And really, as I thought about doing this video, what I thought to myself was, I am going to do this entire topic a complete disservice, right? So what I knew about sleep, let's say a few months ago, was next to nothing. To be perfectly honest with you, it was very, very little. It's not part of our curriculum during undergrad or during chiropractic school. It's not something that, unless you go out and study on your own or get some like postdoctoral training in, that you're going to know much about. I don't think it's something that medical doctors, cycle through their rotations in a sleep lab or something like that. So realistically, you have to go out on your own and kind of learn this stuff. And I had picked up a book recently, and that led to the topics that we're going to talk about tonight. So let's start off with that. There's this book here called Why We Sleep, and it's done by Mr. Matthew Walker, PhD, who's a professor of neuroscience at UC Berkeley. And it's a fantastic book. If you read in your spare time, if you do any pleasure reading, it's something that should go on your list because it's a fantastic story time. Like there's lots of stories mixed into it, but it's also incredibly didactic. You're going to learn so much about a topic that you honestly should know a lot about. It's just that if you never went looking for it, you might not have ever thought that this is something that you should do. So tonight we're going to go over a lot of the stuff that's in that book. So like if you don't read, this is going to be a great overview of that topic. But also some things that are sprinkled in from the National Institute of Health and some other sources. But it really parallels that Why We Sleep book by Matthew Walker. So pick it up if you haven't already and take a look at it. But we're going to jump right into it here. So what do you think that you already know about sleep? Do you know why you sleep? Have you ever thought about why we sleep? Is sleep like this passive thing that you just kind of fall into and your brain shuts off and there's nothing else that happens? Absolutely not. Nothing of the sort. Let's summarize it to this real quick. The less you sleep, the shorter your life. That's crazy, right? I mean, think about that for just a second. If you don't sleep enough, your life is going to be shortened by something called all-cause mortality. All-cause mortality. The risk of you dying from all causes across the board goes up the less you sleep. That's crazy. That's really important, and that's really the topic of what we're doing here tonight. You need to understand that first. So this isn't just a farce. Some of the numbers that we're throwing out at you here for the rest of this topic, some of the ideas that we're talking to you about is not like a little thing. It's a huge thing. So keep that in the back of your mind as we're talking about this. The less you sleep, the shorter your life is going to be, right? So let's dig right into it a little bit more. So why do we sleep? Because sleep is linked to memory, both short-term and long-term memory. It's linked to physical performance, and that's not just endurance training, that's also muscle strength, that's also recovery. It's linked to creativity, right? That sounds a little bit weird, right? But the less you sleep, the less creative you are, and that's actually in the research. And I don't even know how they researched that, but it's in the research. And then lastly, it's linked to emotional state and mental illness. Right? And so that's another one that you wouldn't otherwise think of, and we'll talk about kind of cause and effect there and what happens. And originally when I wanted to do this talk about sleep, I thought I am not going to be able to cram it all into one night, but I'm going to cram it all into one night, right? So I'm going to give you a little bit more here this evening so that next week we can talk about something else. If I miss something, tell me in the comments, hey, what about this? What do you think about this? And if I realize that I missed something, I'm going to hit you up with it next week on this Wednesday Night Wellness Live Talk. So what determines when we're awake and when we're tired and when we're actually asleep, right? So it's another thing that really doesn't make sense so much. Why do you get sleepy? What happens? You're awake and then suddenly you're tired and then suddenly you're asleep. How does that exactly happen? Well, there's two different ideas at play which determine when you're awake, when you're tired, and when you're asleep. And one of those things is your circadian rhythm, right? And maybe that term is thrown around just a little bit. People think about it as like light and dark, or the light that stimulates that, and it does. Light plays a big role. We'll talk about that when we go over the National Institute of Health's ideas for what you should do to get better sleep. But the other thing that goes into it is adenosine. right? Adenosine is a chemical in your body that builds up the longer you're awake. So if you're awake long enough, this adenosine builds up until it forces your body. It's building up in your brain, and it's telling your brain, we need to sleep, and we need to sleep now. And that's that feeling of tiredness you get that then sets off your melatonin. So this melatonin is released in your brain that then basically is like the starting pistol for you to go to sleep, right? So there's two different ideas at play. One, it's getting darker, so your circadian rhythm tells you, hey, we should get tired and go to sleep. Let's start that process of kind of shutting some things down and getting our body temperature cooled down a little bit, which happens. And then the other thing is that adenosine that builds up, right? So that's why you can't do like 3 all-nighters in a row, because your adenosine would just force you to go to sleep. But you shouldn't do that anyway, so that's a whole different idea. So the actual act of sleep is put together in three different stages, let's say, right? So a lot of people think it's 2, the REM sleep and then the NREM sleep, but it's actually 3. So you have a light NREM sleep and you have a deeper NREM sleep, and those two play different roles. But I want you to think about all of the NREM sleep as your brain kind of processing the information that went in through the day, right? So it's taking it from shorter term memory, pushing it into longer term memory, making connections with that information to make it make sense, right? And so some of what you're dreaming is helping you to make sense of that, or to like repackage some of that information. And then REM sleep, I want you to think as like the creative side of sleep, where you're taking some of that new information and then you're putting it together with older information and creating all new ideas. REM sleep is also when your body shuts down your muscles, so your muscles are not responsive to you during that cycle. And the reason for that, which is kind of interesting, is because otherwise, as your brain's kind of putting together these new fairy tales and these new ideas, your muscles would try to start acting out at, right? If you're dreaming that you're running, your body would try and make your legs start working to run, and that's not going to work. So the two different parts of sleep, equally important, right? So I don't want you to get stuck in the old school of thought where it's just REM sleep that you need. You need both sets of sleep. And we'll go a step further here. If you miss a night of sleep, let's say you pulled an all-nighter, you needed to do that test, whatever, it's going to take you 3 days to catch up on that one night of sleep. So it's not you didn't get any sleep on Thursday, Friday you have a good night of sleep, you're ready to go for Saturday. No, if you didn't sleep on Thursday night, it's going to take you all the way to Monday morning till your brain is caught up, everything is fully recuperated and ready to go. And here's the other problem with it. Those 3 days when you're catching up, you're also missing out on the stuff that you're putting in additionally, right? So you never actually make up to sleep, but for your brain to catch up, it takes 3 days for every 1 day that you miss there, okay? So that's a quick overview of why sleep happens, what you need it for, and then also kind of how it happens, real quick. So now let's talk about kind of how we sleep. So we sleep in this monophasic pattern here, at least in the United States. Most industrial countries, we sleep in this monophasic pattern where you go to sleep at night, right? You don't sleep during the day, you sleep at night. In fact, naps, depending on where you're from or how you were raised, were almost looked at as a sign of laziness. Oh, you're napping because you're lazy or because you have nothing to do. In other countries, naps are looked at much less harshly, much more gently. And the idea is that we used to have this biphasic pattern of sleep. So if you look at hunter-gatherer tribes in less industrialized areas, they still do most of their sleep at night, but then they take this nap in the middle of the day. Greece, a lot of areas in Greece still celebrate this siesta where they will take naps in the middle of the day. And the research, I mean, this is straight from Matthew Walker's research because he's got 60 research studies out there. I haven't even read all of them. It's just a ridiculous amount of information. But the research shows that better sleep makes you live longer, and then also in these Greek countries, the men are living to 90s and 100s a lot more than we are here in the United States. So maybe we can take something from that. I don't know, but naps should not be quite as harshly looked at as they used to. Maybe even still, if you're going to go into that monophasic sleep cycle, right? Sleeping just at night, which I adhere to, I stand behind. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But you're going to need more sleep during that monophasic period. So how much sleep do you need, right? So I get this question all the time, and it kind of drives me crazy because everyone wants an out, right? Everyone's like, well, so there's 24 hours in a day. I need more than 16 to get all my stuff done. Sleep's got to give. How much sleep can give so I can get all my stuff done? And the answer is not much, right? So sleep is so important that I would argue that anything else that you have to do should take second place. I know the world doesn't happen like that, but it's an idea that you should think about because 7 hours is the absolute bare bones minimum. And the reason that they use that number based on the research is because after 10 days of sleeping less than 7 hours, your brain is functioning equal to missing an entire night of sleep. So after 10 days of getting 6 hours of sleep, your brain is just as bad as if you have stayed up all night. That's bad for you driving. That's bad for you concentrating. That's bad for you physically. It's bad across the board, like we talked about, right up front. This is not going to work out for you. You need at least 7 hours of sleep. You should shoot for 8 or maybe even 9, depending on what stage of life you're in. Children obviously need even more than that, 10 or 11 or 12 hours, depending on what age your child is. But for adults, and that's what we're sticking to the conversation to a little bit here this evening, you need 7 hours of sleep, bare bones minimum, between 7 and 8, and that is restful sleep, right? So another question I get, well, how do I know if I got restful sleep, Dr. Merrill? What does it take? Here's my first argument. These little things, right? These little Fitbit things that you can get, or Apple Watches, or probably a dozen other sleep trackers, are going to tell you what restful sleep you get, right? Little app on your phone, you can look through it. You can see what time you fell asleep, what time you woke up, how much restful sleep you got, what your heart rate was doing. You'll see when the train went by. You'll see when your dog barked, because it all shows up on those sleep trackers. Get one. Use it. I mean, you can get them as cheap as like $40-50 right now. Find it, start it, because otherwise you're just going to be shooting in the dark. We all know that if you can't track what you're studying, you're going to do a poor job studying it, so get a sleep tracker. Second thing, and if you don't want to do that, if you don't like that idea, if you're against all that technology, if you didn't have an alarm clock, would you wake up, right? Think about it for a second. If your alarm didn't go off, are you going to pop awake at 7 a.m. and jump out of bed, or 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. or whatever time it is, and go about your day? Or are you going to totally miss that, overshoot that, and keep sleeping? Because that's a really good sign that you're underslept, that you're not getting enough sleep, and that it's going to affect you negatively in the future. So sleep tracker, or wake up without an alarm clock if you can do it, although I would argue that's not maybe the most scientific way to do it. So let's focus on adults and seniors just a little, like I had said before, because the other common thing that I hear a lot is, why can't I sleep like I used to, right? When I was younger, when I was in my teens, when I was in my 20s, I could sleep just fine. And now that I'm in my 40s and 50s and 60s, my sleep is just terrible, and there has to be a reason for that. And there's very particular reasons for that. Here's where I like to introduce this, and it's not specifically to adults, let's say, but whatever. Alcohol just devastates your sleep. It's terrible for your sleep. Any alcohol before bedtime is going to mess up all those sleep cycles. You're either not going to get enough NREM or REM sleep, and you're not going to get a restful night's sleep. If you're drinking alcohol around bedtime, stop doing it, because it messes up your sleep, and then it's going to take you days to catch up on that sleep. Second thing is fragmentation, right? So as we get older, we wake up more to use the restroom. We're lighter sleepers because of children or whatever, and we get this fragmented sleep that doesn't allow us to sleep through the night, and therefore it's not as restful as, say, when we were younger. There is also a lower quality of sleep. So the research shows that the chemical activity in our brains isn't working like it used to get us this better sleep. So it takes a little bit more sleep to get the same restful sleep. And then the last thing is regression of sleep. And I bet you guys didn't know that this is actually something that happens. There's a research on this. As you get older, you want to go to bed earlier. It's like a common joke that, you must be an old man because you want to go to bed at 8 o'clock every night. And yes, maybe I do, and maybe I am an old man. But there's research to explain why that sleep regression happens. And so understand that if you're not getting to sleep when your brain is telling you to go to sleep, you might be missing that window where the melatonin is telling your brain, hey, it's sleep time. And if you miss that window, it's harder to get to the starting line, right? So you want to hit that window where your melatonin is ramping up to put you to sleep. And if you're missing that window because it's too late, nothing good happens. It's harder to get to sleep, right? So let's see. Let's go now to what should I take, or let's talk about sleep supplements. And this is why I wanted to break it into another week, but we're going to try and zip through these real quick. So everyone's looking for the cheat, right? What puts me to sleep? What's going to keep me asleep? How can I get away without doing it the right way, right? I want the shortcut, Dr. Merrill. And so a couple of things, CBD versus marijuana. So Dr. Walker's take on CBD is a lot of good research out there, nothing conclusive yet. If it works for you, take it. It's probably not affecting your REM sleep. Marijuana, on the other hand, is affecting your REM sleep. So I don't care if it's legal or illegal, it is affecting your REM sleep. And I would argue that if you're doing it before bedtime, it is going to mess with your sleep long term. Again, very bad for you. Don't do that. CBD if you must, marijuana, not before bedtime. Melatonin and 5-HTP are also supplements that we hear quite a bit about. Again, melatonin just starts that process to sleep, right? So if you're going to use it to get to sleep, that's fine. The research doesn't really support it for long-term sleep health and sleep habits. You can use it. It's not going to mess with your long-term sleep. 5-HTP is a precursor to melatonin, so if you take 5-HTP, it is helping you to get extra melatonin to start that process. So if you must, you can do it long-term. It's not going to help you, so I would say just don't do it long-term. Sleeping pills, right? So something that your medical doctor would prescribe, and they hand these things out without even a second thought, right? These benzodiazepines, these other Lunestas, these new cutting-edge sleep medications, and they're terrible for you, right? If you look at the research, they are terrible for you long-term. Do not do this long-term. This can be a crutch like for a week or 2 weeks while you're trying to figure out what else you're going to do or while you're getting everything else established. But long-term, these things are bad for you. Oh my gosh. There was a recent research that it increases your all-cause mortality, your mortality, your risk of dying between 3 and 5 times while you're taking it, even if you're taking just a small dose or a light user, 18 pills a month. 18 pills a month, I don't know who the heavy user is if you're taking 18 sleeping pills a month, but your all-cause mortality goes up between 3 and 5 times, right? Not good for you. Nobody wants to be dead because they're not sleeping right. Don't just take the sleeping pills. Utilize some of these other things that we're going to give you here in just a second because it is not a good long-term solution. So, you can go to the National Institute of Health and you can get all of these tips that I'm about to talk to you about in much greater detail. National Institute of Health, look it up. There are 12 tips for healthy sleep or whatever it is. But I summarized some of them because, again, it's a time crunch. So you got to stick to a sleep schedule. In fact, what Dr. Walker argues is that sticking to a sleep schedule is the single most important thing you can do to ensure that you're going to get healthy sleep and create good sleep habits, right? So whatever that schedule is, here's my bedtime and here's my wake time. Now, it's important to understand your awake time is already set most times for most people, right? At least 5 days a week, you have a set time that you have to wake up and go to work. And so that the wake time is set, which means that all you have to do is set your sleep time. And if that sleep time is forever changing, you're never going to get a good sleep schedule. Don't do it. That's what you have to pay attention to is what time do I go to sleep because it has to match what time you wake up in that 7 to 8 hour realm, okay? So exercise, right? Exercise is great for sleep. You want to get your exercise done early, right? Because if it's too late, if it's in the later hours, an hour or 2 hours before bedtime, what ends up happening is your core body temperature goes up and stays up, which isn't otherwise a bad thing. That's your body burning calories, except that when your core body temperature stays up and doesn't drop down, you end up not being able to go to sleep because your body has to reduce your core body temperature by about 1 degree for the rest of that sleep cycle to take place, right? So your melatonin starts it, and then all these other things have to happen for you to get to sleep and stay asleep, and one of those things is your body temperature has to drop just a little bit. So exercise in the morning, great for making you go to sleep later on that night. So you have to avoid a few things, and that's what I summarized into. Caffeine, not before bed. Obviously, I would shut that down morning time. Nicotine, alcohol, food, beverages besides water, and then any medicine that might interfere with your sleep. And there's a lot of them that do. If you look at the side effects for a lot of the medications that are in your cabinet right now, medications that you take every day, they have the potential to interfere with your sleep. I would make sure that you're not taking them near bedtime or work with your doctor to make sure that this is not going to be causing a side effect. Naps. So if you're going to take a nap, if you're going to be in that biphasic pattern of sleep, that's fine. You can do it. Don't take your nap after 3 p.m. Right? If you're taking a nap after 3 p.m., you're going to start to step on the toes of the adenosine building up in your body to make you tired later, and you don't want that to happen. So nap happens before 3 p.m., whatever that means to you, it doesn't matter. You have to relax before bed. So a lot of people schedule their day so compactly, so full, and I get it. I got kids, I got work. We're all struggling to make sure that we have enough hours in the day, except that you need to make sure that there's some time to relax before you have to go to sleep, right? If you get done doing all your house errands and dealing with the kids and doing last minute work and then just try and lay down in bed and fall asleep, it's not going to work out for you. You have to be doing things that are going to help your body to start that process of using melatonin to get into the right stage for sleep, and it takes some relaxation before you do that. Here's another issue. It can't be with blue light. So relaxing for you should be with a book, with some music maybe, but it can't be with your phone, it can't be with your laptop, and it can't be with your TV right before bed. Because the research shows that all of these things emit blue light. All of these things mess with your circadian rhythm. That's what starts the melatonin so that you can get to sleep. So relaxation time should be something where it's dimly lit, right? Turn the lights down, make sure that it is not too bright because that is going to go against that circadian rhythm. And then stay away from these blue light type products, including your cell phone, which is the hardest thing to put down, right? I mean, it sits right next to your bed. It's the hardest thing to put down, but that's not relaxing time. That goes into the I'm still doing stuff time. Relaxing happens after that. So back to the idea of getting your body temperature go down 1 degree. If you take a hot bath right before bed, you'll get to sleep. Now that doesn't make sense, right? Dr. Merrill just said I have to cool my body temperature down. Why would a hot bath do that? And it's because you increase blood supply to all of your skin and outer tissues, which then when you get out of the tub, your core body temperature goes down that 1 degree. So a hot bath is going to help make sure that your body temperature goes down, or a hot shower. Make sure that your body temperature goes down when you get out, and that's going to help stimulate your sleep. So a good thing to do, not exercise, but a hot bath works. And then the last thing, and Dr. Walker and the National Institute of Health kind of harp on this a little bit, and they give very specific instructions, but I don't think it lends itself to everybody in quite the same way. So you need to get some exposure to daylight earlier in the day, right? If your daytime is very bright and your nighttime is very dark, it's going to help your circadian rhythm get stronger, and that's really important. So you need to make sure that you're taking full advantage of this. Oh, my phone's doing all kinds of stuff. Taking full advantage of this and getting bright light in the day and keeping your room dark when you sleep at night, so you don't want any light peeking in, all right? And so that's it. That's all of the different ideas that you can take and start doing right now. Get away from some of these other sleep crutches, or whatever you want to call them, these different substances that you take to go to sleep, because long term they're not going to serve you very well. It's a habit, just like anything else. If you go back a couple weeks, we did another talk on habits. You can look back in YouTube. You can look back on this Facebook channel, and you can see the topic that we did about habits and how best to form them. Sometimes it's a reward, right? So if it takes a reward to make sure that you're following your habit to get to sleep at night, whatever that is for you, utilize it so that you can start to build this habit. Again, that's all I have for this evening. This is Wednesday Night Wellness Live. I am going hoarse from talking. It was probably a little bit longer than I had hoped it would be, but now we can talk about something else next week, because all these patients want to talk about all these other different things, and we want to make sure that we are delivering these videos so that they're hearing it. So anyways, if you need more information about the things that we're doing here, you can go to nightlightchiropractic.com. You can also go to drandrewmerrillblog.com and get all kinds of great articles and information. You can sign up for our weekly newsletter there. It's the same one that we send out to our patients. All kinds of good, helpful information, not specific to you, but very valuable information nonetheless that you might not get somewhere else. Other than that, I will see you next Wednesday for Wednesday Night Wellness Live. Be well. Have a great week. See you then.